Yeah, as said, the talk was developed together with Nancy, who joined the Interaction Design Studios just recently as our new managing director and partner. And yeah, we discussed a lot about what to talk about today and what makes our approach unique, or how do we see this world of service design. And I'm very grateful. I think it was a very nice lineup to have in the first block understood what service design can be, what general new methods are being discussed of. The lean approach is very important. We heard of co-creation. And I think it's quite nice that after the break we start and look more into detail and more into the technological aspects of services. That's something I'm particularly interested in. We are definitely living in a technological world, and that's also affecting the way we design services for this technological world. My name is Reto Wettach. I'm a professor for physical interaction design, so I'm very interested in how our bodies react and work with technology. I really see ourselves as bodily creatures who express themselves with their bodies, who have a lot of skills within the way we live as physical beings. We can express ourselves very rich, be it from very strong stonemasonry to very fine violin playing. We have a wide range of expressions. We can learn and we can fulfill very complex tasks with our bodies. I mean, imagine you would have to drive a car or a bicycle just with drop-down menus or touch screens. I think there's a lot of knowledge we have in our body, which is sometimes lost in the way we are currently interacting with computers. We think better with our bodies. This is a big surprise and drives us in our research. So, for example, playing Scrabble. If you play Scrabble just by looking at the letters you have, you will be not coming up with so many words as if you play around with the letters and outsource a little bit of the mental load you are using in this. And we learn from each other through looking at each other. There's the whole theory of mirror neurons, which is very important aspects for why we want to have more physical interfaces. So that's basically the area I'm doing my research in. And being a designer, I think it's always very healthy to have a very practical approach and not just being an academic, a big danger also for a lot of people who are in universities. But I think as a designer it's good to work with companies. And so a couple of years ago, I started my own consultancy, the Interaction Design Studios, and we started basically doing research in this physical field. So how could mobile phones develop if they become more physical, if they change their shape, for example? How could we interact in cars? The experience people are having in cars is becoming more and more the selling point. And how can we have a more physical experience there while still driving and not building an accident? And we started with this kind of world, which was also very technical, because you had to build all these prototypes and sensors and actuators. And interestingly enough, it moved from there to service design. Our clients recognized that this understanding of technology and the understanding of people is something which is really heavily needed for designing innovative and new services. And so that was just to give you my background, but as said, I want to talk today about how we live in a technological world and how we need to design services for this technological world. And I think that any kind of service today, to be able to scale and to be able to really provide a new an enriching and enjoyable experience, you need to understand the technology behind it. So even if you look into a very basic face-to-face service, like a waitress, like a call center experience, which I could talk forever about how horrible this can be, or like the Genie Bar in the Apple Store, where you can go and get any any technical question answered around your product. Even these kind of experiences where two people are interacting with each other can only be done if they are backed up with technology. If you have a good database of knowledge. I really enjoyed Chris's example today of how the retail store is trying to build up a database of what is happening there to improve the service. So you want to have a valuation of what you're doing there. You want to have, as said, a backup of this. You might use new technologies, and I think the ultimate goal is actually, as we heard already this morning, to turn the customer into another expert who helps others, and to give these tools also the tools which help the people providing the service to the people who are using the service and make them part of the whole service experience. So even in this very basic domain, you need to understand how a service can be supported by technology. The next level of complexity is, of course, what we now all experience in the mobile world. Of course, mobile first is the big strategic direction for a lot of companies, and I think it's really important to understand that, of course, it is about the user and the user experience and the service and the value proposition, but at the end, it's also very much about understanding the technology there. And even so, the iPhone or all these smartphones look like very sophisticated and easy to use technological devices. They are very technological, and to design for them a good experience and a good service, you need to understand the technology a lot. I was just visiting two of my ex-students in California who started a service called Flipboard. Oops. So I just let this run in the background. And it's a news aggregator which has a really nice and rich experience, which allows you to have a mental model of this service, which is immediately to understand, very unique, very easy also in the context. You don't need to learn anything. You understand what this service is about. It's enormously enjoyable also, which is really important. It makes the service unique, and it's challenging. I mean, they have been working on this flipping forever, and to get this right, if it's too fast, people don't understand it. If it's too slow, people get frustrated. You need to line it up with the performance of the device, and this is with these smartphones still a challenge. So it's quite interesting to see how much of this such a service is really technical, and how important it is to get the technology right. And the other example to just show how important in the mobile domain, which is getting more important, I don't have to show you the numbers, which is getting maybe the first touch point for a lot of services to get the technology right. I have a little interview with Mark Zuckerberg, who just last month on the 11th of September was asked about, of course, about the stock price and the whole situation with Facebook. But one very interesting part was about what he sees as his biggest mistake.
We've had a bunch of missteps on this. You know, I mean, I think part of the first question that you asked me that didn't quite get to answering was, what are some of the big mistakes that we've made? And when I'm introspective about the last few years, I think that the biggest mistake that we made as a company is betting too much on HTML5 as opposed to native, because it just wasn't there, right? And it's not that HTML5...
So that's quite interesting, I think. I mean, we all know that the discussion and the critique on Facebook is that they didn't get the mobile world right. And they were going for a technology called HTML5. And just to explain to you, what he says we have to do now is called native. So the difference is HTML5 is on a higher layer of abstraction. It's easier to program. It's easier to port it to different devices. But it's a higher level of abstraction. There is a translation engine in between. And the native is the code which is directly understood by the computer inside of an iPhone or an Android device. And he says the biggest mistake was that they went for HTML5. So they did not go into the core technology. They were they were building on a model which other people designed. And HTML5 is still a complex programming language. You can do a lot with it, but you can't do everything. And you can't do everything in the performance which is maybe needed. And so I think it's quite interesting to see that even a company as Facebook, who have a great value proposition for their users, who have a lot of resources, he continues explaining it, spent 18 months on making this big mistake on betting on the wrong technology, and through this getting actually the experience wrong. And he says, so now they launched the iOS native app, and people are spending more time there and sharing in a more mobile way their experiences with their friends, and now they're happy and they will make more money, of course. But anyway, I thought that's quite interesting to see that even in the mobile world, which seems so old, it's already 5 years that we have smartphones around us, to understand this right, it is a technological challenge we may not forget. The next level of complexity in technology is when you use the existing computing devices like PC and laptops and smartphone, and you expand them with new hardwares. To explain this, I'd like to first show a video and then go further. It's from a Berlin-based company called Native Instruments. Oh man, that's quite a challenge here. And so they built, Native Instrument built. I leave the music in the background. Native Instruments basically builds software for electronic music. I mean, really popular and very nice tool because it's easy to get in. A lot of people are using it, and even very professional people are still using it. So it has very wide range of applications. And then a couple of years ago, they started to launch controlling devices for their software. Basically, these boxes you see there, they are completely dumb. There are a couple of buttons and a couple of potentiometers you can turn around, but basically they are like expanded keyboards. So they are just buttons which can change the color, but they are so nicely integrated into their software that people really enjoy doing it. And especially making music, it comes back to my original research topic of physical interaction. It's so emotional. You don't want to sit there, everybody dancing in the club, and you are just with your mouse or touchpad and making music. You want to be part of it, and you want to use your hands and the richness of what you can do with your body to create and participate in this music creation. Another aspect which is really interesting here, they created a unique experience which is richer than a software experience, but also they protected them a lot against software piracy. They had really a problem with young people having no money to buy the entire suite of their products, and to not being able to buy it, and so they stole it and used the pirated software. And now they can give away the software basically for free and have people not having the full experience. And then the people buy these boxes, these hardware boxes, and connect them to the software and have the rich experience, which I think is quite an interesting aspect also when we talk about services and business models. Another example for this expanding the original hardware we are all using into a more richer experience or richer service proposition is Square. I'm happy nobody had the example yet, because it's quite a well-known and heavily discussed example. So I just show, they have tutorials, so they have also a tutorial on how to swipe. So I leave the sound off, but it's very nicely done. Anyway, Square is a payment device so that everybody can accept credit card payment. So once you register, you get this little piece of hardware for free. And I mean, we all, in the service design field, we all know the discussion of mobile payment has been going on for such a long time. Everybody wants to be the mobile wallet, sorry. And there has been a lot of technological issues with this, and a lot of political issues, who owns it, and so nothing happened. So we had near-field communication and RFID on phones promised to us long time ago, but nothing happened. And I think what Square did is, of course, they shortcut the entire discussion on who owns the mobile purse or the mobile payment system, but also they created a really enriching experience. We are all very familiar with this transaction, which is physical. It's like a handshake. You take your card, you swipe it. I mean, we heard this morning that payment is not nice. It's not a nice experience. I think it's okay. We all know we need to pay, but I think this card and this physical aspect of payment is really important. A handshake used to be really a trusted sign. Okay, we have a deal here. And similar to this, swiping, this physical friction there is an important aspect of the whole transaction. They could have done this whole service with putting in the numbers of the credit card, but they didn't. On purpose, I think they decided to get it more physical. And I think it's right. I mean, the near-field communication, so this touchless interaction in payment, for me, that is still scary. I pass by and automatically Oyster card, for example, I pay and I don't even feel that. I think it's very right that they went this way and had added this physical experience to it. And of course, it provides them with a huge advantage. Once this system is established, it's a stronger bond to it through this little piece of hardware. And last but not least, they did something which is really smart, to use the headphone jack. So this is standardized and not a big, no license fee has to be paid to Apple for that. Why is this happening right now? That's an interesting question I'd like to discuss in that point. So we see this technological aspects getting more and more in our life. And one of the reasons this is happening is because also hardware gets modularized. So these days, to develop a new piece of hardware is much easier than it was a couple of years ago, because you can get important parts of the hardware as a module, and you just stick them together. I will show you later a more concrete example on that. But it's today, developing a new piece of hardware it became something similarly to developing a new piece of software. You use a library or you use a module and you integrate it into your software. You use the Maps module and you integrate it, or face recognition and you integrate it. And similar to that, today you can develop hardware. And that's important because the next step which is happening, and Alex already mentioned that, is the M2M, machine to machine, so that everyday objects become connected to the internet. That's a big trend and a big challenge for designers, because how do you design the right experience there? And currently, most of the machine-to-machine solutions are in Investitionsgüter, in production goods. So big machines, Germany is very strong at that. So the machines are reporting back home to the producer how they are doing, how they have been used. And around that, you can think a lot of new services. You can call the clients and say, well, we see you're not using your machine right, can we help you? Or you need an update, or you might need a bigger machine. The cars are communicating with the producers and say, oh, I need to go to the workshop again. So these are the standard M2M solution currently discussed, very engineering-like. But they will go into consumer products. Let me show you an example there. I don't know how many of you know it. It's one information you need to know. In America, all medical packages have the same size. So it's always this orange kind of box with the same size. And so what these guys, David Rose invented, was a system which sits on top of this box. So let's have a quick look.
That go on regular pill bottles and tell you when it's time to take your medication. Glowcaps helps to motivate Grandpa to take his pills in different ways. Reminders, being accountable to his doctor, the support of his family, and automatic refills.
Okay, so these Glowcaps, these caps are connected to the internet, and they know when they have been opened or not. Technically very simple. You need kind of a GSM module, and you need a sensor which just realized, oh, I've been opened and I've been closed again. So, but that already helps a lot. So the first thing, it reminds the person to take it through sound, through light. Actually, it can even call the person and say, hello, you didn't take your medication. So that's the first level. The second level, it might, I would think, is the number 3. It might involve the family. So it might call the daughter or the mother or whoever or the partner and say, he didn't take his medication. Maybe you should talk to him. Quite intelligent. So we talked a lot about the social aspects of services this morning. Then it can also help you maybe to have a different relationship to your doctor. A lot of the medication today is one size fits everybody. But instead you might, in a system where we know how people take their medication, we might be much more precise on which medication to give to whom, because we know he's able to do it every 3 hours, and this person, well, he can only do it once a month. So they might need different medications. Insurance might be interested in that. And of course, the service can be enhanced, so you can have an automatic refill once the system knows how you take it. And that's quite interesting. So that's, again, a service, and you need to understand the technology. So you see, there's a lot of technological aspects to services which you have to design. And what I'd like to conclude now is to show you how this is done in the design practice. So there's actually 3 aspects I want to briefly touch with this. In this technological world, we need also new tools in the design process. We heard of prototyping this morning. We heard the criticism, for example, on paper prototyping and having people coming into a lab and showing them, that's how the interface might look like, and then they say, that's interesting. This doesn't work anymore. This doesn't work for mobile service, for example. How do you replicate a situation? Somebody is on the road with his friends, stressed, distracted, when he sits on a table and somebody says, what do you think about this service here? So you will never get the right answer. And so what we developed in a project was a tool. A tool well, it's based on the idea of Wizard of Oz. So we have a location-based service. It was a location-based service for the telecom in UK. And they wanted to find out what kind of services are good, what kind of rules do we need to work with when we create location-based services. And so we built a little client which works on any mobile phone, Android and iPhone. And the client is very stupid. It just receives messages and allows a little bit of interaction. And afterwards, people can give a feedback. And the people who used it were told, okay, you are now trying this new location-based services, and afterwards we will interview you and we'll find out how you liked it and how you didn't. But in reality, we had a dashboard in the background running where everything was done by hand. So we had the profile of the person on the left side. We know what he said in the initial interview. We had a little bit of a structure of his usual day or weekday and weekend day. We knew what we sent already to him, and we knew where he were right now. So you see the little map. And so we could push ideas to him and see what he liked and what he didn't like. So very popular among young parents was that we pushed good night stories at 7:30 to them, so they didn't have to think of what good night story to read, and they knew now it's time to bring the kid to bed, and so on. This was very popular. And what was very interesting through this, for example, was if the services become too customized, because we knew them quite well. We had a one and a half hour interview with everybody. If the services became too customized, they were really afraid. They thought, what? How do they know that I would like to have something like this right now? So that's why I was quite interested in this broken experience. So sometimes it's dangerous to be too customized. There's a whole theory behind this. But it's a very good example of how you use technology in a design process. And if you have a team of people who are able to do this quickly and cheaply, because there's no rocket science in setting up a tool like this, you can, fitting for any kind of project very quickly, get very first results, as we heard in the morning in the whole lean startup discussion. Another aspect of service design in a technological world is, of course, as I mentioned, that products and projects become more and more technical. And I cannot show so much about our own work because we are all under an NDA. I'd like to show a master project of a student who just graduated and who will launch this on Kickstarter at the beginning of the next bicycle season, so in spring next year. And he came up with a concept which is similar to what we already see in the whole quantified self movement. So how can we measure how we drive, bicycle? How can we motivate people to drive more bicycles, especially in urban contexts? And he also came up with a little piece of hardware. And this is basically on the wheel. And it's a Bluetooth sender which sends once the wheel starts moving, and then the smartphone picks up this signal and starts the app, and then tracks where you bicycle, how far, and how many kilometers you did, and whether you achieved your goals, and it shares it with friends, etc. The whole range of service we can think of. But what is interesting here again, so it's not only it increases the value of the experience, because today you would have to go out and set up okay, I'm now starting to ride my bicycle, and now I'm stopping, and so on. But it increases the experience, and it gives also an interesting business model, because buying a product is more valuable and more fun than buying a service. But what is also interesting that he basically used a completely finished module which is off the shelf. He didn't develop anything on the hardware himself. There is so many modules, it's only difficult to find the right modules. And so he has a module with Bluetooth and accelerometer on it already. And so he just needs to program it. As soon as you move, please send a signal, and that's it. And it lasts for 10 years, according to the producer of this module. So I think it's quite interesting how important it is to understand technology to create interesting services. And the closing point, you were getting already nervous a little bit. My closing point is, when we do this and when we work in this field, which is very technological, we should start sharing the knowledge, because we are also not building from zero. We are taking things other people thought and built on that. And that's an important aspect of my work in university, to share knowledge about how we design with hardware. And I mean, I just close with showing you the website, because the time is fleeing. So we developed an open source tool which is amongst designers who play with hardware, and artists and exhibition makers, very popular. It's called Fritzing, and it allows people to share knowledge. We have tons of examples of how to connect hardware, different displays and sensors and actuators, and it allows people to produce their own PCBs, so they can really go professional with this. It came out of a research project, and is one example of how I think we should learn from others and not be afraid to take from others, but it's also important to give back as a community, especially in these technical fields. Otherwise, if everybody starts from zero again, we will not advance. So that's it, service design for a technological world. Thank you.
So we are a little bit over time, but one quick question. I really want to give Reto the chance actually to answer a question.
Oh, please.
One. So, who's got a question? There must be questions. There are many Germans here, right? Germans always have questions. So, the thing to learn is to ask them, so we can all together try to answer them. No? Okay.
I can answer a question myself.
That would be kind of the pattern now.
Yeah. Well, what I'm really...
What is the question?
Well, how technological do we have to be to design good services? And I think what we do in our university is really to give a fundamental introduction into hardware and software. And then I think it's really important to keep up to date and to see what are people doing with stuff and how are they doing this, but also to have teams where you have good engineers within the team. But I think also the creative people have to understand technology. And Fritzing, by the way, surprisingly, we do a lot of workshops in agencies because they see, that's a good way of understanding fundamentally technology. Even if they never will design a piece of hardware, they know now how a mobile phone is built. And if there's a new technology coming out, they immediately understand, yeah, that's a sensor and it works like this and that. And that's where I might be able to introduce at that position a new service. So I think learning is important. Even if you don't do it yourself, you should know what's happening there.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bringing prototyping to the next level.